Okay, now that we're set up, we're going to open our UCI script, and we're going to need to see that UCI script doing its thing. We're going to start by creating a big old division. Again, everything that we've said previously, we are simply writing this code linearly. Should you think about coming back and reorganizing and laying things out in a different way, you probably should. But for class purposes, we're just going to write as linearly as possible. And so we are creating a new section here so that we can start working on these list boxes. The way list boxes work is that they run on .choices. So we need to assign an array of choices to the .choices. Now, normally, the array that we assign are strings, and that's what we're going to do today. So we've already said that what we need to put into our list boxes are not the pretty names, HDMI1, HDMI2, HDMI3, etc. Instead, we need to assign an array of friendly names. So let's create an array of friendly names. Remember that we can define an array by setting it equal to the braces, or as I like to say, the squiggly brackets. And then we are going to populate it with the strings of our choice. We want it to say laptop 1 and laptop 2 and wireless. And lastly, logo. Because here's what we're going to do. We are going to change the presentation order of those sources. We're going to put laptop 1 first instead of graphic 1 first, because even though the NV32 uses graphic 1 first, our user is going to want to probably use the 2 laptops more frequently than using the company logo. And the company logo is actually a really nice trick. The way that works is you simply load a graphic file into your NV32. There's 3 slots, graphic 1, 2, and 3. And so you can choose in between 3 different static images of your choice to make that happen. And so we actually have a really friendly Overlay Industries logo that will come up when we select graphic 1 as a pretty name. These are our friendly names. This is the order in which we want those friendly names to be presented. And so let's actually assign those pretty names. Where do we find our lists? They are on controls and list out 1, and the choices are the array of friendly names. And same thing here, controls.listout2.choices equals the array of friendly names. And we're going to do one more thing. Remember funkinit that we wrote for this thing? It always is taking us to the room. That's how we want it to work. But since we're developing and we're trying to do all this work in displays, let's come up here to funkinit and let's simply quickly change this to be K-layer displays. Otherwise, it's going to keep changing on us every time we hit reload, and that's going to be annoying. But here we are. Look what has happened is that we have indeed populated our list boxes with the friendly names of our choosing in the order of our choosing. So let's actually see how these controls work as well while we're here. So let's write their event handlers. Controls.listout1.event handler equals a function, pass in the CTL, just like you were expecting. And let's print CTL.string. We'll just keep it simple and straightforward. And so controls.listout2.event handler equals function and pass in CTL. And because we open it, we're going to close it and we're going to print CTL.string. You know what? Let's put in here that it was list out 1 picked CTL.string. And this one down here is also going to say list out 2. Yeah, there we go. Now, let's see this thing in action. So let's make some choices. Okay. Notice there we are. We are picking, and it is showing what we have picked. Doom, doom, boom. And so as I pick laptop 1, you can see that it says that I picked laptop 1. So let's think about this in slow motion. What is happening? We have a list box. We have assigned an array of strings to the choices of the list box. When we go over and we make a choice in the list box, the string that we pick from the array of choices gets written into the controls dot string. If the dot string changes, that is an event. And events get handled, and that's why it prints. So what should we expect if I click laptop 1 again?
An event that gets handled.
Actually, no.
How dare you?
Because we already had laptop 1. So laptop 1 was already in dot string. When I went and picked laptop 1 again, it wrote laptop 1 into dot string, but then Q-SYS said, well, we started with laptop 1, we ended with laptop 1. That's a delta of nothing. So that's not a change, that's not an event. There's no reason to call in the event handler.
It's not very eventful.
It's not. And actually, if you think about it, this is exactly what you should expect to have happen. And this is exactly what you actually want to have happen. If you are picking a state of affairs and you've already picked those state of affairs, you don't actually need to do anything else about it. It's already where it's supposed to be. Now, do you remember in the last couple of videos, we talked all about those tables and arrays and writing things in a scalable fashion?
I mostly blocked them out. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I know I look like I'm here, but I tend to ignore you if I can.
HR, this is what I'm talking about. We wrote previously in a very scalable fashion. And you may recall that the way that we were able to write our BTN presets for the lighting controller was in an array of controls. And we sat there and we configured it and it had a count. And we were able to use that in our iPairs loop. Is that ringing a bell now, Nate?
I'm sorry, what were you talking?
We want to be able to write even this code in a scalable fashion. But you might remember that we just pulled things in off of the toolbox. There's no way to do click, 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 make a count. The way that we have to make an array of controls is exactly that. We have to make our own array of controls. So let's do it. Let's define an array of list boxes. And there it is. And what are we sticking into it? We are actually going to stick our 2 list boxes into the array of list box. So controls dot list out 1 and controls dot list out 2. Now we can come back and we can write a loop that will assign the choices. We also can write a loop that will write the event handlers. Let's give that a shot. Why don't you actually hit pause for a second and see if you can remember how to write an iPairs loop. Did you figure it out? Let's do it together. We are going to write for I, CTL in iPairs on which table? On the table called array of list box. What do we want to do? We now have an iPairs loop, but do we want it to have these 2 lines of code? No, we don't. We want to write the 1 line of code that will scale with the loop. So we're going to replace this with ctl.choices is the array of friendly names. And then we can get rid of those 2 lines. Great. All right. This is a loop to assign the dot choices. And so let's also write a loop for I, CTL, also in iPairs, also on the array of list box. And we want to do what? We are doing a loop to write the event handlers. And what do we want to do in our loop? Same thing, CTL.EventHandler, because what is CTL in these loops? They are the list boxes. They are the controls. So CTL.EventHandler equals a function. And what do we want to do? We want it to, we're going to make it print the same things. We are going to print that list out. We're going to concatenate in the number so that we can get the 1 and 2. And then what did it do? We are going to say picked. And what did it pick? It picked CTL.string. And with that, we can get rid of those 2 individual event handlers. And we can hit save. And now we can see that we indeed have replaced all of that individual code with scalable code by making our own array of controls. So here we are building on the ideas that we have laid out previously.
And again, just to reiterate, right, like the whole point of that was that it's scalable for more than 2, right? We just did a loop that did 2 things. So it does seem a little silly, like, we replaced those 2 things with these 2 things. But these 2 things now work for a billion list boxes with no further code, rather than having to write all those out individually.
Right, right. And don't underestimate the value of doing it for the 2 list boxes. It's really the one set of logic just with 2 sets of data. So we're able to solve both list boxes effectively simultaneously. We are largely eliminating the need to copy and paste and have the same bits of code twice because we're writing it inside of the loop. And if you're looking around thinking, oh man, the water's getting a little bit deeper, because it is. But we also genuinely hope that you also are finding that you are more and more comfortable with these kinds of syntaxes and ideas, because we're just going to keep going deeper from here.